he just died.
The pathologist said no definitive cause of death can be identified, and James's death has been certified as unknown natural causes. Witkowski still questions exactly what happened the night that James died, and now she's hired her own private forensic pathologist to take a second look. How does a 2-year-old pass away with no explanation?
Welcome back. I'm Cassie, and this is A Wicked World. The story I have for you today is one that was suggested by a few of you, and it's definitely one that needs more attention brought to it, because this little boy, who died nearly 5 years ago, has still not gotten any justice. This is the story of James Biel. James Riker Biel was born on October 6, 2017, to his mother, Kara Witowski, and his father, Thomas Biel, in Palatine, Illinois. James was a sweet little boy who could make anyone smile. He loved playing with his big sister, singing and dancing. James also liked monsters, he loved the song Baby Shark, and he was said to be highly adventurous and curious. James's parents, Kara and Thomas, never got married, but they were together for 5 years. And throughout their relationship, Kara said that Thomas was emotionally and physically abusive towards her. He would tell her she wasn't a good mother, her kids didn't like her, and she was worthless. Things in their relationship got even worse in August of 2018 when Thomas raped and sodomized Kara. A few days after it happened, Kara would confront him, and Thomas ended up apologizing. He then made the excuse that it had happened because he had had so much trauma in his early childhood. He told Kara that his father, Jerry Biel, had sexually abused him, which had caused him depression, dissociative personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder. It was one of his other personalities who had raped her, he said. But Thomas also promised Kara that he would go to therapy. He wanted to get better, so she decided to stay with him. But even with Thomas going to therapy, things in his and Kara's relationship did not improve at all. And in March of 2019, Tom actually raped Kara yet again. After this incident, Kara turned to a PTSD group on social media and made a post about what had happened to her. Well, Tom ended up finding out, and he called her, threatening her life. So Kara decided that enough was enough, and she reported the rape to police. She also started to make a plan to escape from Tom. She was going to take her 2 children and go stay with a friend until she got back on her feet. But Tom found out about that too, and he told Kara that if she left, he would not only kill himself, but also her. Kara knew that she was not going to stay with this horrible man any longer, however. Once Tom realized that Kara was not bluffing, she was not coming back to him, he decided to tell her the truth. The truth was that he had never gone to therapy as he said he had. He also confessed that he had never had dissociative identity disorder or multiple personalities. Also, at one point prior to this, Thomas had said that this alternate personality had made him almost beat a child to death. And the judge who would later preside over their custody case, Judge Dalton, knew about this. So just keep that in mind. Kara asked Tom if the kids were safe with him, to which he told her that he was probably a greater danger to them than he was to her, because he loved her more. So Thomas was arrested after Kara reported the rape to police. However, he was never charged, and he ended up being released the very next day. Police said that there was not enough evidence, even though Kara had text messages in which Thomas admitted to what he had done to her. Additionally, Kara was never notified when Thomas was released from jail the day after he was arrested, and he showed up at her house. When he got there, Tom would get up in Kara's face, but luckily, Kara had a friend there, so he wouldn't end up hurting her or the children. But Kara decided that it was time to take out an emergency protection order against her ex. Now, for the past few weeks since their split, Tom had been using Kara's car, because even though it was in her name, she didn't have a driver's license. He did. And when he returned the vehicle back to Kara, she was cleaning it out and found a hard drive that she knew belonged to Tom. And on it, she found thousands of CP images. Tom would later admit that this was his hard drive, and he asked Kara to destroy it for him, which she clearly was not going to do. Instead, Kara notified police as well as Child Protective Services to make them aware of the situation. Around the same time, Kara and Tom's daughter told Kara that her grandfather, whom she and her father lived with, James Biel, had touched her in her private areas, which were also very red and irritated. The little girl also had lots of bruising on her legs and said that her grandfather had hit her. Police would then open an investigation into James Biel. After this, Kara filed an emergency motion to try to get only supervised visits for Thomas. This was in April of 2019, but when it went to court, Judge Dalton wouldn't listen to Kara or look at any of her evidence. And she even had a recording of her daughter saying what her grandfather had done to her. So Kara's petition was denied, and Thomas was given unsupervised visits 4 days a week with both James and his older sister. As far as their grandfather Jerry was concerned, he was just ordered to not have any contact with the children. But as I had said, he lived with Tom, so therefore he lived with the children 4 days a week. But when the judge was told this, he just said that Jerry could go in the other room. The kids are going to be there for days. Jerry's not going to just go into the other room for hours on end. Come on. Nearly 2 weeks after getting more custody time than he should have, Tom decided to further hurt his ex, and he followed up with a petition to restrict her parenting time. This was done behind her back and while she was at work, so Kara never had any chance to defend herself against the claims that Tom had made in order to gain custody. And the court would end up awarding him temporary majority custody, and they outlined supervised visits for Kara. So Tom now had nearly 100% custody of the children, and Kara only had a few supervised visits here and there, even though the children had been hurt while they were in his care. The last time that Kara would see her son James alive was on August 6, 2019, over 2 months prior to his death. And in September of 2019, Kara had been ordered to attend court for contempt for speaking out against a gag order, and she was threatened with prison time for saying that officials had her back up against a wall and had forced her into a 50-50 custody agreement. Kara knew that something was wrong with her children, and she had done everything in her power to try to protect them. Unfortunately, James would end up dying on Halloween night. It was on October 31st, 2019, around 10 p.m., that 911 responded to the 1300 block of East Evergreen Drive in Palatine. James was found in his grandparents' master bedroom, on the bed, lying on his back, and his lips were blue. There was also a small red bubble coming from his nose and red foam coming from his mouth. The little boy was immediately rushed to Northwest Community Hospital in Arlington Heights, but despite resuscitation efforts by paramedics and then hospital personnel, James was pronounced dead. According to James's grandparents, who definitely should not have been watching him given Jerry's history of sexually abusing his father, said that the toddler had been on the bed playing with an electronic device after his father Thomas had left for work. His grandmother had then gone to shower, but when she returned back, she thought that James was just sleeping on the bed. She then noticed that his lips were blue, and she called emergency services. And James's father Thomas said that he had left for work around 9:35 p.m., leaving his son in his mother's care. Thomas told police that prior to him leaving that evening, that his son seemed healthy and responsive. He also added that before he left, James felt rather warm, and he was going to take him to the pediatrician in the morning. An autopsy on James's body would end up taking more than 3 months to be completed, and when it came back, it would show that James's cause of death was due to undetermined natural causes. And it had been less than 24 hours after James had died that police ruled out foul play and closed their investigation. The medical examiner was trying to say that James's death was caused by sudden, unexplained death in childhood, which only happens to 1 in every 100,000 children. But the thing is, James's medical records showed that he had been treated multiple times in the past several months for a prolapsed rectum. His autopsy said that it found this did not contribute at all to his death. James's mother, Kara, said that her son had actually been hospitalized 9 times in total for his prolapsed rectum. And when she had sought answers from her ex, Thomas, he just told her that James had been constipated. However, Thomas told doctors that James had no history of constipation. James's mother, Kara, had also been told that during 4 of these appointments, rape kits had been done, but she never saw any results of these. Also, Kara did not know until after her son's death, because no one had informed her, that according to James's medical records, he'd been at high risk of morbidity since August of 2019. This was due to the fact that he had undergone rectal repair surgery, but his rectum would still not go back in. So given this, and the fact that there had been a red bubble coming out of James's nose, as well as red foam coming from his mouth, his mother, Kara, knew that his death was no accident. And she decided to have a second autopsy performed.
He absolutely loved monsters.
The only keepsakes that Kara Witkowski has of 2-year-old James,
I miss being able to hold him,
can fit in a shopping bag.
I've had absolutely no closure in all of this.
Witkowski's ex had custody of James on that night in October when Palatine police got a call for an unconscious 2-year-old in cardiac arrest.
He was laying on his back and his lips were blue.
But by the time Witkowski made it to the hospital, James had passed away.
When you're sitting here telling me that you can't explain to me how my son died, I can't believe that.
More than 3 months passed by with no autopsy results from the Cook County Medical Examiner's office until this week when she got this letter.
He just died.
The pathologist said no definitive cause of death can be identified, and James's death has been certified as unknown natural causes. Witkowski still questions exactly what happened the night that James died, and now she's hired her own private forensic pathologist to take a second look. How does a 2-year-old pass away with no explanation?
This is a category of death that eludes science today.
Laura Gould Crandall leads a national foundation that's trying to answer that question. Crandall says James's case currently falls under the category of sudden, unexplained death in childhood that about 1 in every 100,000 kids falls into. They don't know how to predict it or how to prevent it. Records obtained by the CBS 2 investigators show that since 2014, the Cook County Medical Examiner could find no explanation for the cause and manner of the deaths of 26 children between the ages of 1 and 4. Crandall agrees that these families need more answers.
The examiner who had performed the little boy's autopsy the first time around, John Walsh, was said to not even have the necessary credentials to perform the autopsy. The medical examiner also kept James's heart, brain, and neck organs, even after the autopsy was completed. They said that this was for genetic DNA testing, to see if they could confirm his sudden unexplained death in childhood cause of death. But James's heart and brain were kept for that purpose. There should have been no reason for them to keep his neck organs. Though thanks to the help of a civil attorney, the pathologist that Kara had hired was finally able to obtain these organs, though 8 months later. The findings of the second autopsy were that James Biel's death was caused by trauma to his cervical spinal cord. This had caused his spinal cord to swell, which hindered his ability to breathe and led to brain swelling, then brain death, which resulted in the accidental ruling. It was stated in the autopsy report that more investigation needed to be done to determine the cause of the injuries, and both police and Child Protective Services were made aware of this. Also, the only incidents that could lead to this type of cervical spinal injury would be a car accident, fall, sports injury, or child abuse. A report of suspected child abuse and neglect that had been filed by a physician and the forensic pathologist was determined to be unfounded following an investigation by Child Protective Services. James's mother, Kara, says that she will continue to fight for justice for her son. She will fight until someone is finally held accountable for his death. Police said that during their investigation, they found no evidence of a crime, which is why they had closed the case. They had also used a sexual assault kit on James after his death, but it had come back from the crime lab indicating that there was no other DNA, or so the police said. The police chief also said that if Kara provides them with any new evidence in the future, they'll look further into the matter. Isn't that their job, though, to be looking for evidence, not hers? Following James's death, Kara retained custody of her daughter 4 out of 7 days of the week. However, her father Thomas still had her the other 3 days a week. Kara was doing everything she possibly could to gain full custody of her daughter, but I'm not sure what the status of that is. Kara also launched a Change.org campaign calling for the reopening of James's death investigation. Since his death, she has also held multiple peaceful protests in front of the Palatine Police Department. But as of today, there has still been no justice for James Biel. Well, thank you for listening to James's story today. This is absolutely appalling that so many people can ignore the fact that James's death was clearly not accidental or sudden unexplained child death syndrome. Not to mention that he and his sister had been abused for months beforehand, and his mother had plenty of proof of it. So why is James's father Thomas being protected by the court and authorities? What do you think? So if you like true crime and you want to hear it from me, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button below. And turn on your notifications too, so you'll know when I upload a new video, which is at least twice every week. Thanks for watching A Wicked World today. Until next time, take care guys. Bye. Thank you to all the patrons of A Wicked World. Now, there's even more of A Wicked World on Patreon. So check it out at patreon.com/awickedworld or use the Patreon app. You'll have access to exclusive videos each month and more. Any support truly helps to make sure the victims never get forgotten and to highlight the shortcomings of society associated with each case. Do you have a suggestion for a case you'd like to see me cover? If so, send me an email at awickedworldtruecrime@gmail.com.